In August 1945, the world stood on the brink of a new and terrible age. Two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, had been struck by weapons unlike any previously known to mankind. Their destruction was sudden, immense, and transformative in our known history. These events compelled the Empire of Japan to accept surrender. But imagine, for a moment, that the imperial leadership did not yield. In this alternate course of events, the inner council in Tokyo fractures but does not break. Hardline military leaders argue that the homeland must be defended at all costs. They insist that American resolve will falter in the face of mounting casualties. The emperor hesitates. The decisive broadcast never comes. Japan refuses to surrender. The consequences unfold immediately. The United States, already deep into preparations for Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands, accelerates its timetable. Operation Olympic, the assault on Kyushu scheduled for November 1945, becomes inevitable. Hundreds of thousands of American soldiers, battle-hardened from Europe and the Pacific, brace for what many privately believe will be the bloodiest campaign of the war. Across the Pacific, troop transports assemble in staggering numbers. Airfields on Okinawa thrum with relentless activity. Bombing raids intensify, not merely to weaken defenses but to isolate Japan completely from external supply and reinforcement. Naval blockades tighten like a steel vice around the archipelago. Starvation looms as an invisible but inexorable weapon. Meanwhile, within Japan, the government mobilizes the population for total resistance. Civilians, men, women, even children, are organized into patriotic fighting corps. Training is rudimentary, weapons are scarce. Yet the message is unambiguous: the homeland must become a fortress. The specter of invasion transforms every village and hillside into potential battlegrounds. The Soviet Union, having declared war on Japan in early August, presses its offensive deeper into Manchuria. In this prolonged conflict, Soviet forces do not stop at the Korean peninsula's northern reaches. By autumn, they contemplate landings in Hokkaido. The possibility of a divided Japan, akin to the divided Germany emerging in Europe, becomes alarmingly real. As September turns to October, American strategic bombing continues unabated. Conventional firebombing raids further devastate industrial centers already crippled by earlier attacks. Infrastructure collapses. Rail lines twist under explosive force. Urban populations flee into the countryside, only to find food increasingly scarce. The nation edges toward humanitarian catastrophe. Yet still, the Japanese military leadership clings to its central assumption that unbearable losses inflicted upon invading forces might force Washington to negotiate more favorable terms. November 1945 arrives. Operation Olympic begins under gray skies. Amphibious landings on Kyushu encounter resistance fiercer than anticipated. Coastal defenses, reinforced in anticipation of invasion, unleash concentrated fire. Kamikaze aircraft, conserved for this very moment, descend in waves upon Allied fleets. Naval losses mount. The sea itself becomes a graveyard of burning hulls and shattered decks. On land, progress is measured in yards rather than miles. American forces, accustomed to brutal island campaigns, find Kyushu's terrain unforgiving and densely defended. Japanese soldiers fight with grim determination. Supply lines stretch. Casualty lists lengthen daily. Newspapers in the United States report heavy losses, though the full magnitude is censored to preserve morale. Back in Washington, the question resurfaces with chilling urgency: should additional atomic weapons be used? In this alternate timeline, further bombs are indeed readied. Production, though limited, continues. By late 1945, additional atomic strikes are authorized against military-industrial targets. Each detonation compounds devastation and deepens moral unease within Allied leadership. The unprecedented nature of such weapons begins to reshape diplomatic calculations worldwide. The Soviet advance in East Asia accelerates geopolitical tension. Red Army units consolidate control over Manchuria and move decisively into northern Korea. Plans for a landing in Hokkaido gain serious consideration. American planners, alarmed at the prospect of Soviet occupation on Japanese soil, confront a strategic dilemma. Speed is no longer merely a military objective, it is a political imperative. Winter approaches. Fighting on Kyushu grinds forward at immense cost. Civilian casualties rise as combat zones engulf populated areas. Disease spreads in overcrowded shelters. Food distribution systems collapse entirely in some regions. The once formidable Japanese empire is reduced to a shattered, starving bastion. Internationally, the continuation of war strains the Allied coalition. War-weary populations in Britain and the Commonwealth question the mounting sacrifices. In China, nationalist and communist forces maneuver to exploit Japan's prolonged weakness. The shape of post-war Asia grows ever more uncertain. By December 1945, Japan stands at the precipice of total annihilation. American forces secure substantial footholds in southern Kyushu but at staggering human expense. Preparations quietly begin for Operation Coronet, the planned assault on the Kanto Plain near Tokyo in early 1946. The prospect of urban warfare on a scale dwarfing anything yet witnessed looms over both sides. Within Tokyo, famine tightens its grip. Transportation networks have collapsed beyond repair. Industrial production has virtually ceased. Communications falter. Even among hard-line generals, doubts begin to surface. The promise of inflicting decisive casualties on the invader has not translated into strategic advantage. The emperor, increasingly isolated yet aware of his people's suffering, confronts a profound reckoning. In our reality, his voice in August 1945 signaled surrender and spared Japan further devastation. In this alternate history, that voice remains silent until the year's bitter end. On a frigid night in late December, after months of relentless bombardment, invasion, and privation, a final imperial conference convenes. Reports from Kyushu detail untenable losses. Intelligence suggests that the Soviet Union is prepared to move into northern Japan within weeks. The specter of partition, of a communist north and an American-occupied south, haunts the chamber. At last, the deadlock breaks. Japan announces its surrender before the new year. But the cost has multiplied beyond comprehension. Casualties on all sides have surged dramatically compared to the historical timeline. Entire regions of Kyushu lie in ruins from ground combat. Additional atomic strikes have etched deeper scars into the national psyche. The Soviet Union, having advanced farther during the extended conflict, exerts greater influence in post-war settlements. The geopolitical consequences reverberate for decades. A divided Korea emerges more heavily militarized from the outset. Soviet leverage in northern Japan fosters political tensions that persist into the Cold War's earliest chapters.
The Pacific Theater is expanding,
American public opinion, shaken by mounting invasion casualties and repeated atomic use, grapples with profound moral and strategic questions. The extended war reshapes the narrative of victory. Rather than a sudden, decisive conclusion in August, the Pacific conflict drags into winter, culminating not in stunned silence but in exhaustion and fragmentation. History, as we know it, turned upon a single decision in August 1945. In this alternate path, refusal prolongs devastation and complicates the peace that follows. The bombs still fall, the armies still land, the suffering deepens, and the post-war world that emerges is colder, more divided, and shadowed by even greater mistrust. Such is the fragile hinge upon which history rests. A moment's resolve, or its absence, determining whether catastrophe ends swiftly or lingers into a darker dawn.
Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into alternate history fascinating,